Chapter 11 of A Lucky Penny by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 11, in which the lucky penny proves its right to that title. The first place they struck was on Devonshire Street. They found the position had been filled 2 hours before. The next place they looked up was on a short street called Elm, which ran into Hanover Street. "Nothing doing," said Tom when he rejoined his chum outside after making an unsuccessful application. Tom's third attempt to get a job was made at the corner of Fleet and Hanover Streets, and he was too late again. "I guess I'm not in it today, Dick," he said with his customary cheerfulness. "Let's go in here and have something to eat. It's 1 o'clock. They entered a small oyster and chop house and ordered a cup of coffee and a plate of raw oysters on the half-shell apiece. "Hello," said Tom as he was in the act of swallowing his last oyster. "What's this?" And he peered into the shell. "Why, if it isn't a pearl! And it looks to be a fine one at that." He detached it and passed it over to his companion. It was undoubtedly a very fine specimen, and quite big. "This is a larger pearl than the one my mother had in a ring, for which my father gave $75, said Dick as he returned it to his friend. "It ought to be worth $100, properly mounted." "At that rate, we ought to be able to get $50 for it as it stands," said Tom eagerly. "It wouldn't be too much to ask for it," replied Dick. "Gee, what a piece of luck! If the boss of this shop knew we had found such a prize in one of his oysters, he'd have a fit." "Wouldn't he?" grinned Dick. "This meal has been a good investment." Tom put the pearl carefully away in one of the pockets of his vest. "I've got one more advertisement in my pocket," said Tom after they had walked a block. "I don't know whether there's any use in going there now. Jobs are generally snapped up early in the morning. The early bird catches the worm, you know." He pulled the slip out of his vest pocket, and as he did so, something dropped on the walk. "There goes my lucky penny," he cried to Dick. "Stop it." The bright coin, however, had rolled out of the lame boy's reach. He made a futile grab as it disappeared through the bars of an iron grating. "There goes my run of luck," said Tom in a vexed tone. We don't say that he was superstitious, but somehow or another, owing to the remarkable way the penny had come into his possession, and the manner in which it had brought him a $5 bill, not to speak of the finding of a valuable pearl in a common oyster shell, while the coin was in his possession, he had come to regard it, just as some people do a rabbit's foot, as a lucky fetish. "There it is," said Dick as they stood on the edge of the grating, and he pointed at a shining object down among the rubbish which had accumulated below. "I wonder how we can get at it," considered Tom, who was anxious to repossess himself of the coin. "This shop is vacant." There was a mutilated sign, "To Let," pasted on the window, and from its mildewed appearance, as well as the amount of dirt which had gathered on the glass, the boys judged the shop had been looking for a tenant for many months. "I'm afraid that's the last of my lucky penny," said Tom regretfully. "Too bad, isn't it?" replied Dick, who shared his companion's concern for the lost coin. Tom mechanically tried the shop door. The knob turned in his grasp, and the door opened an inch. "Hello!" exclaimed Garland. "The door is open." The hinges were so rusty and stiff that the door yielded only after some force was applied. Once inside the dust-begrimed shop, the boys lost no time in going to the rear, where they expected to find an avenue to the basement. They were not disappointed. A rickety stairway enabled them to reach the gloomy regions below. Picking their way over a lot of debris, the accumulations discarded by the former tenant, they reached a small opening directly under the grating. Tom looked through and saw that the penny was in his reach. It rested upon a dirty-looking object embedded in a mass of ruck. As Tom's fingers closed about the precious penny, he dislodged the object on which it reposed. "Gee, that looks uncommonly like a pocketbook," he muttered. "Have you got it?" asked Dick in an interested tone. "Sure I have, and I've hooked something else with it." He pulled up the sodden object, and sure enough, it was a pocketbook. "Wait till we get up in the store where there's more light, and we'll see if there's anything in it." With doubtful anticipation, Tom carefully opened the flap of the pocketbook close to the front window. "Money!" almost shrieked Dick in great excitement, as a fat wad of bills was disclosed. Tom was too astonished to speak. He simply stood there and stared at the damp roll as if he was dreaming. "How much is there?" cried Dick, waking him up to the fact that this was the real thing he had in his hands. "Great horn spoons!" ejaculated Tom. "What are we up against, anyway?" Why don't you count it?" asked Dick, hardly able to control himself. Tom took out the money and counted it in a gingerly way, as if he was afraid it would go to pieces in his fingers or otherwise disappear. "Well?" asked the lame boy impatiently. "How much?" $900. "And it belongs to us?" cried Dick, trying to cut a caper on the floor. Tom looked through the pocketbook for anything else, but there was nothing but the money. "Yes," said Garland slowly. "I guess it belongs to us, all right." "What's the matter with your lucky penny now?" cried Dick in delight. "If this sort of thing keeps on for a week, you'll be able to buy a bank, won't you?" "It is certainly remarkable," answered Tom, pulling out his bright penny and looking at it almost in awe. "Puts me in mind of the story of Aladdin's lamp in the Arabian Nights. The idea that the cent jumping out of my vest pocket and running down into the grating and alighting on the top of this old dirty pocketbook, which has been lying there for months from the look of it, just as if it knew the thing was there. You might also believe the penny was alive. No use bothering about that job today, Tom, after this windfall." "Well, I guess not. We'll go and hunt up a boarding house." Tom concluded that the Charlestown district would suit them for the present, so they caught a car which carried them across one of the bridges and up into a neighborhood where they shortly secured board and lodging with a nice little old lady in a quiet, shady street. Taking immediate possession of their room, the first thing Tom did was to spread the money out on the table to air and dry out thoroughly, as fast as he separated the bills, an operation which required much care and sometimes ingenuity to avoid tearing them in pieces. "You'll put this in the bank, won't you?" said Dick, surveying the spread with a great deal of satisfaction. "That's the place for so much money as this," added Tom. "We can afford to treat ourselves to some new clothes and maybe things we actually need." By the time they were called to supper, the money was in good shape to be folded into a wad again, and Tom hid it under the mattress of the bed. That evening the two boys visited a furnishing store and purchased a complete outfit for themselves, including a couple of valises. "We are now out of the category of the tramps, chum," said Tom with a grin as they were carrying their purchases back to the boarding house. "Thanks to your lucky penny," replied Dick. "That's right," asserted Garland. "It has proved itself a fortunate talisman." End of chapter 11.